There's no Zoom for today, right?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to get started.
There's a stick over there. Matthew, how does this rain come down?
I have no idea in this room.
There's gotta be a projector somewhere.
Go back to return to main menu, please. The bottom.
Because he wants this projected,
Can
an
you
image
click the
projected.
video system on?
Watch your head.
Alright. We didn't know where it was
Yeah,
coming
he's
down.
really
I'll
not
just-
in a good spot.
And then just an image on.
That's easy. Okay.
It should pull up whatever's on the. Is it already plugged in? I'm just gonna triple check it's working.
Okay. Okay, good. Just want to get a way of Jan, if you've got your default IT person this morning. Okay, I call to order the meeting of the House Regulatory Subcommittee of Regulated Industries. I want to thank the members of the subcommittee for being here this morning. We're a little light. And I'd like to thank the members of the audience that are here as well. We have two bills on our agenda this morning, HB 994, which will be a hearing only, and HB 1231. Ground rules for today's testimony. We'll be taking testimony on each of the bills on the agenda. If any member of the audience wishes to speak, please let yourself be known at the appropriate time. So I think we're going to start with Representative Wilson, your HB 994. If you would come to the podium, please, and tell us about your bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me see if I can do this so you can hear me. Can you hear me? Madam Chair, I do have a handout for the committee, if that's all right. Thank you, Jan. And I appreciate you putting this on the agenda for today for this very important bill. I think it's probably easiest for me to start out telling you why I brought this bill. There was a very tragic accident that happened August 31st of last year, and I'm sure the committee members will be familiar with it. An 18-year-old football player, high school football player, or prep academy football player, Jamarcus McFarland, was tragically crushed in a falling elevator that he was trying to escape less than 2 miles from here in a student dorm right behind Atlanta Medical Center. And, you know, the video was released. It was a horrific accident, and, of course, it happened in front of his peers and his fellow academy members. But as the investigation kind of unfolded, one of the worst parts of this that came out was that the students that were in this academy with him said, we've been complaining about this elevator for years, and sent screenshots of the inspection certificate that showed the elevator had not been inspected for 2 years, well past the required inspection date by state law. And when and I provided you an article that kind of lays all this out for you, but when the question was presented to the insurance commissioner, whose department is responsible for elevator inspections, of course, of why this was allowed to persist, the response was, well, it's the property owner's responsibility to schedule an inspection from our department. And while that may be true, the question and outrage that I had was, at what point does the state step in and say, if you, the property owner, are not scheduling the inspection in a timely manner, then when does the state step in and say, we're going to do it for you? So I bring you House Bill 994, and Madam Chair, I'm working off of LC number 510060. And I'll just walk you through this very quickly. It's a straightforward bill that is meant to raise the disincentives for the property owners not to comply, and also add some authority to the insurance commissioner. And if you look at starting on line 29, this is where the changes start. And we're looking at code section 8-2-104, and this is the elevator inspection code section. The first change we make is in line 30, and we strike the words by private inspectors, and that is just to make clear that for these changes, this bill would affect all elevator inspections, not just those that are conducted by private contractors that are hired by the property owner. Line 30. And Madam Chair, just to provide some more context on that, the department the department does perform some inspections, but the vast majority of these elevator inspections are conducted by private companies. The property owner calls and contracts with the private inspector to conduct the inspection in the time required, submits that to the insurance department, and they get their certification and move forward. So this would apply to all inspections, not just those by private inspectors. Looking at line 32, so let me take one step back for a moment. When an elevator is placed in service, whether it be private property or a public building, it's required to be inspected before it's put into service. And then the law requires every year, every 12 months, it has to be re-inspected. There's a 12-month inspection that is a light inspection, if you will, and then there's a 5-year inspection that's a much more thorough, detailed, in-depth inspection that occurs. And for the life of the elevator, those inspections are required to be performed. And of course, you know that the elevator has been inspected when you get in it, because you can see the certificate, the frame certificate, in the car of the elevator, and it has the expiration date on it. So the property owner knows when the reinspection date has to occur, because it's either that expiration date or it's 60 days prior to that. The property owner has 60 days to reschedule the inspection and have it occur before that certificate lapses. The current law provides that if that inspection does not occur, there's a $500 fine. This bill would increase that fine to $2,500. You see on line 36. And at the beginning of that subparagraph on line 32, we're adding a requirement that the insurance commissioner shall schedule an inspection if the property owner has failed to do so. And this is intended to prevent what happened with Jamarcus McFarland in this incident, where the property owner continued not to schedule an inspection for years, and instead it would take that responsibility and give it back to the insurance commissioner, so that we don't allow multiple years to go by before something tragic occurs. That's subparagraph B. The next subparagraph, starting at line 38, provides that if, for this rescheduled inspection that the commissioner has scheduled, let's say the commissioner sends the inspector out to the property, and the private property owner says, well, today's not good enough. No, it's not good for me. I got other things going on. We can't do it today. This would provide an additional fine of $2,500, essentially to ensure that there's cooperation between the property owner and the department, to ensure that the inspection occurs as soon as practicable, and that it's not something that's just going to drag out and keep getting rescheduled. That goes over to the next page also, Madam Chair. And then there's a second subparagraph D, starting at line 43, that's added, that just provides that if a second round of rescheduling the inspection has to occur, there is an additional fine of $5,000. So now we're talking a total fine of $10,000 at this point per elevator for that property owner, and the commissioner shall reschedule the inspection. The only other change, Madam Chair, is down at line 59, and this is a change to this subparagraph 4, which provides that all of these fines that I've laid out, and there are additional fines in neighboring code sections that the insurance department can levy against a property owner who's not in compliance. This subparagraph 4 just simply says that the commissioner has the discretion to waive these fees at any point if the reason for the delay is due to a backlog at the department or is the fault of the state and not the fault of the property owner. The insurance commissioner can waive those fees. What I have added here is, if such waiver is provided, that there be some transparency about that, and that not only does the commissioner notify the property owner in writing, but that there be a record kept at the department of all of the fees that have been waived. And the reason for that is because we heard testimony in the House Insurance Committee about the backlog that has persisted at the insurance department, and how Commissioner King is working to address that. This would ensure that if his efforts, the efforts of the General Assembly, are not enough to address that we'll be able to see that there is a problem persisting, and that can help us ensure that we're doing our job and running government efficiently. I'll stop there, Madam Chair, and allow any or take any questions that any of the members have, and happy to provide any additional context that may be helpful.
Thank you. You do have a question. Number 7.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you to my friend for bringing this piece of legislation. A couple of questions I had for you. Currently in code, are we regulating dumb waiters in code?
We are.
We are right now?
Mhm.
Okay. And also, too, I'm assuming that increase of the monetary penalty is just to compel folks to do what they should be doing. Is that correct?
Exactly. It's just meant to, if right now the total fine here is $500 per elevator. So let's assume that there's 2 elevators in a high rise, for example. The penalty on the property owner of just kicking this off maybe for another year is only $1,000. That was not enough for this specific property owner. And we know it's not enough for many other property owners because of the backlog that we've heard about in the House Insurance Committee.
Follow-up question, if I may. On your legislation, you said that you were going to be giving the commissioner the discretion to waive the fee based on some facts there of if the inspection was at the fault of the state.
He already has that discretion. That's the current law.
Okay. So you're just to be clear, you're asking for some transparency as to why the commissioner would waive that fee?
Or not necessarily why, but transparency about how often those waivers are being given out.
Okay.
So that there's a record there.
Okay, just so there's a record that everyone can know, the general public, the legislature, the governor, everybody.
That's right.
Okay.
Because if I do think that there's a need to increase the incentives for the property owner to comply. So I do think that is an important piece of that. But the other important piece of this bill is also this transparency piece, because if the property owners are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing and they're calling and trying to schedule appointments, but because of a lack of resources at the department, for example, there aren't enough. We were told last year when we passed a bill that passed both chambers and was signed by the governor that changed the inspection requirement from every 6 months to a full year to every 12 months. And we were told that the reason for that is multiple reasons, but one was we don't need to inspect every elevator every 6 months because brand new elevators are much safer than they were when this law was first passed in 1981. Right. They're just made safer and made to last longer and are made at a higher standard. Number two, the department would need 20 additional inspectors funded in order just to catch up to the backlog that they were experiencing as of last year. Okay. So this is meant to add some transparency to help track that as well, Representative, so that we can see if a backlog is persisting and it's the fault of a lack of resources, then we need to know about that as lawmakers.
Thank you. Number 12.
Thank you. Applaud your. Do you have me on?
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the author of the bill, I applaud your efforts to help protect the citizens of the state of Georgia. But can you work me through again why you provided this AJC article that I've attempted to speed read, but what's caused the backlog problem?
And I want to be clear, Representative. You all know I'm not speaking for the insurance department, right. and I think they might answer this question differently than I would. But the answer is a lack of resources. They need a lot more inspectors, and a way that and that requires money. That requires funding. So a way that the department in recent years has tried to work around that is by allowing more private inspections to occur, contracting with private inspectors that the department certifies and gives a license to conduct these inspections, and then allowing the property owners just to work with private companies. That has not been enough to catch up. So last year we were asked to change the law to extend the inspection period from every 6 months to every 12 months. And this, I think, is the next natural step as well, to make sure that property owners understand they have got to meet these deadlines, because the state is ensuring that these elevators are safe when, in fact, they may not be. because they haven't been looked at by an inspector. In this instance, it was 2 years.
In the follow-up question, if I may, so in reading the AJC article, it said, thanks to a faulty computer database, government regulators have no idea of how many of Georgia's 34,000 elevators, escalators, and moving sidewalks are overdue for inspections, or for how long. And that, obviously, we have a relatively new insurance commissioner inheriting a faulty database that apparently, according to the article you passed out, that's a huge part of the problem. You have now, if the database is fixed, and I have no idea if it is, we've got a rat moving through the snake, and it takes a minute, especially during a pandemic, and it's very difficult to get a contractor to come add a awning to your home, let alone find licensed professional contractors to come inspect your elevators. I applaud your efforts. We've got to keep the citizens of Georgia safe. The 20 inspectors you reference, I just make it clear, you have no problem with a licensed, certified, appropriately trained private inspectors coming in and helping them catch this backlog up, correct?
That's right.
It doesn't necessarily entail full-time, hiring 20 more people full-time as employees of the state of Georgia.
That's right, and I appreciate you highlighting that. I think that there's no one way, I think, to fix this problem. There are multiple ways that we can fix it, but I also think there's no one single solution to this problem. That there's multiple aspects that we need to address. The database was a crucial aspect, and I'm glad to hear that there's been funding made available that will allow for a new database so that the department actually knows how many elevators are out there, which ones are out of date, and then can target those that are most out of date. But I also think that this incident made clear we've got to increase the fines on the property owners who are not in compliance, and make it more hurtful to them and to their pocketbooks, quite honestly, to just simply not comply, and then also ensure that the department is being proactive in scheduling those inspections after the 60-day mark when the property owner has failed to do so.
And a follow-up question, if I may. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you need to put teeth in the law. When there's failure to comply with the law, then there needs to be consequences. My only question about that, and again, you're the learned attorney and I'm not, but in the initial, if the property owner fails at a very initial appointment, is there any, you mentioned that can the department waive that fine in the initial, for the initial non-compliance, if the commissioner's office deems it to be a legitimate reason? It could be as simple as a child getting sick and the property owner had to be home with a sick child, or automobile accident, whatever verifiable excuse not to be hit with a major penalty. Is that an option? Is that flexibility already in this bill that I'm overlooking, or is that something we could consider adding to it if the measure moved forward?
I think the answer to your question is both. I think that particular situation would be addressed by this subparagraph 4, which is the existing law that the commissioner can waive those at his discretion if the inspection or payment were unavoidable, or due to the action or inaction of the department. So if it was unavoidable, then I think that section would cover it. But also, Representative, I believe there is another provision in a code section nearby to this one that gives even more discretion to the department to waive those fees.
On line 58, I did miss that operative word "or." I was looking due to the action or inaction of the office, so thank you for clarifying that.
They don't teach that word "or" until third year of law school, Representative.
There we go.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Anyone here wishing to speak to the bill? No? I did have a quick question, actually, Representative Wilson. What is the cost of an inspection? Let's say I had an apartment building with one in Midtown with one elevator. What would it cost me to have that elevator inspected?
So I think it's going to depend on if you have the state do the inspection or if you hire a private contractor. My understanding and it also depends, I think, on the size of the elevator. If we're talking about a passenger elevator like we use in this building, or a freight elevator, that sort of thing. But I think it ranges from a few $100s to maybe for the freight elevators, maybe past $1,000.
Okay, thank you. And I did have a quick question. You said initially that the legislation was designed to prevent accidents like the horrific tragedy that occurred. Would that do it? Would this legislation fix the problem that resulted in this particular accident?
Not by itself, but I do think that this is an important piece that needs to be taken up. I appreciate my friend for highlighting some of the other changes that have been put in place this year and over the tail end of last year, updating the database. Actually overhauling the database, having a whole new database at the insurance department so that they can track all of the elevators and see which ones are out of date. That was one of the most alarming facts we learned in the insurance committee, was that the department actually did not have a way to see which elevators are out of date for inspections. And so that is a very important piece. I think also extending it from the 6-month to the 12-month to let some of the pressure off on those and free up the inspections. So we're not inspecting elevators that are brand new 6 months off of the factory line. And then also I think increasing the penalties against non-compliant property owners and adding a little bit of transparency there.
Right. My understanding is that Office of Insurance and Safety Fire Safety is in the process of revamping that database, correct? So they would be alerted. And I think it takes up to a year probably to reach that point. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, but thank you. Number 12, my friend.
Thank you again. So on that note, and again, you've been following this issue obviously very closely. I look forward to hearing from the Commissioner's office if they're going to testify today to verify the answer. But have you been tracking through the appropriations process whether or not any additional funds were allocated to the through the appropriations process to help alleviate this problem in the Commissioner's office? And if so, did you help advance that?
I have been watching for that, Representative. I believe it was very helpful this year when now we're only having to pay one insurance commissioner salary instead of two. I think that freed up a significant amount of department money. And then there were additional appropriations, I understand. I'll let the department speak to what those were and where they came from, but that are being used to build out this new database.
So would you not agree that it's a resource issue for the department that is best addressed to get more boots on the ground and backlogs uncompliant elevators addressed more quickly to give them the resources they need, and that best comes through the appropriations process? So specifically, my question was, were you out advocating for specific line item requests to help the insurance commissioner's office?
Well, absolutely. The speaker still has not put me on appropriations, but but certainly that is something that that the department has needed, and whatever funds it takes. I'd like to see the department receive additional funds for additional manpower, but I understand they were instructed not to ask for any personnel this budget cycle and last budget cycle. And obviously I have no control over the department, but they are taking steps to address this. The database is a huge piece of it, but this is also a critical piece, as you spoke, Representative, that we've got to make it harder on property owners who are just willfully not complying, like this property owner was, and then also make it clear that we expect the state to actively step in at some point and take over the scheduling of those inspections if the property owner is failing to do so.
And Representative Wilson, I think I had read, are there 34,000 elevators in Georgia? That's
There
what I
are-
read.
there
And
are a lot.
14 inspectors, did I hear that correctly?
At the department.
Woefully understaffed, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I believe the testimony we heard, Representative Williamson can correct me if I'm wrong, but the testimony we heard last year was that the department would need 20 extra inspectors just to be able to conduct. If we stayed with the 6-month schedule, it would take a total of 34 inspectors.
Thank you. Well, if we have no more questions, thank you so much for your testimony, for bringing this bill. I know that I would certainly like to hear more from the commission, and we will keep you abreast of developments as relates to the bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving along. I'm looking forward to this bill. Folks, we're going to take a look at House Bill 1231. And this time I'll ask Representative Camp to come to the podium.
I am excited that apparently House Bill 1231 does not warrant local media attention.
Did they leave?
So I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Channel 2. All right, so my House bill is House Bill 1231, and we're working off of LC 364952. And this bill came about for a couple of different reasons. Someone brought this premise to me, and I thought, well, there are people who are working and they're unable to make money because you cannot collect money in Georgia legally if you do not have a cosmetology license to apply makeup or blow dry hair or curl hair, or thread, which is the process of using a thread to remove hair from the face and other places someone might have it. But it really hit home when there was an event that took place in my family. And there was a young woman that came and she did the hair and makeup of someone for an event. And it ends up she dropped out of cosmetology school. Because it was just not something that really, she was good at hair and makeup. She wasn't interested in coloring hair or doing any of those things, so she never got a cosmetology license. But essentially, she was breaking the law by applying makeup and doing someone's hair by blow drying it and curling it for some pictures. She was breaking the law. So we're preventing people from making a living who are very talented in a lot of things. On social media, we see, well, they come up a lot, I know, social feeds, but there are some people who are extremely talented in our state who simply apply makeup and simply curl hair or flat iron hair or dry hair that really could be making money at this. So it's really an opportunity for people to make money without having to go to cosmetology school because they're never applying chemicals, they're not cutting hair, they're not tweezing, they're not doing anything that really requires a high-level skill set. So that's why I've brought this bill. So it's known as the Niche Beauty Services Opportunity Act, and it lists very, very detailed. On line 38, blow drying means the practice of only shampooing, conditioning, drying, arranging, and braiding hair, curling, straightening, or styling hair, and mechanical devices like flat irons and dryers. It clearly states, and here as you read down, it does not include coloring hair, bleaching hair, reactive chemicals, keratin treatments, or other preparations to color or alter the structure of the hair. Basically, it also prevents people from performing drying of hair and curling of hair on the same day as one of those treatments in the case there was a chemical burn or some other issue. So that being said, I'm open for questions. I'm sure there probably are several. When I presented this to some of my male counterparts, they informed me that this was really outside of their privy because they did not get their hair styled. So if you have any questions, though, I'm sure there's someone in your life who does.
Thank you so much. Do we have any? I think we do. Chairman Collins.
Well, I can't speak for all the men in the House, but I think myself and Representative Williams, we've applied quite a bit of cosmetic over the years.
That is true.
Yeah, we're funeral directors, so that's what we do.
And
No,
so do funeral home directors have to be licensed to apply makeup and hair
No.
to their patients?
Well, you have to be licensed to practice the arts and sciences of our chosen profession. But
Interesting.
my question would be, if I may, as far as these opportunities, could this be a standalone business,
It could be, yes,
Could
sir.
be. It could
Most
be a
definitely.
standalone business.
Most definitely. If it's entirely possible, someone could open a storefront. And of course, the business practices and licenses that apply in that individual community would, of course, stand. But yes, most definitely, it could be a business. It could be a mobile business. It could be a business where, someone has, I don't know, a van or some type of vehicle they go around and perform these services. So most definitely.
And if I might point out here, it is almost a new industry that's popped up in our country. I imagine some of my male counterparts may not be familiar with that, but dry bar, I know, is one. For a lot of working women that are very busy with very busy schedules, it's quite an enjoyable thing to go and have a blowout where your hair is washed and blown out and styled, independent of a cut or color. That doesn't have to be a part of it. So.
Correct. And right now in Georgia, it's interesting. If someone is applying makeup in a store, for example, like just a box store, they don't have to have a cosmetology license to apply makeup in that store. So the fact that we're kind of taking the middleman out of this, we're allowing the individual to be a business generator.
Understand. Representative Williamson. Oh, I'm sorry, Williams.
Thank you. Have you spoken to the State Cosmetology Board, to them about this? Did they have any opposition to it or anything?
Well, I did speak to a member of the board. They did not have a problem with allowing individuals to do this for special events like the situation that I experienced. They did have an issue with it being a standalone operation because they said there would not be oversight, that they would be able to apply. But I know firsthand, it is happening quite frequently. So instead of turning a blind eye, and there's really nothing regulatory, my understanding, the cosmetology board could do to someone who's unlicensed in this situation other than assist and deceased. Is that correct? Yeah, that's pretty much all they could do to them at this point. Of course, they're trying to protect their industry, and I understand that, but these are practices that are happening. They're not evasive in any way. I guess, you might get your makeup applied and not like it. That's entirely possible, but that's impossible anywhere. You can get your hair styled somewhere and not like it. That's possible anywhere you get it done. So this is just giving an opportunity for people.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. In a hair salon, someone could actually employ someone as a shampoo person, and they work in that salon. Do they have to be registered or anything?
No, they're working under one person's license. For example,
like an apprenticeship.
No, it's not even an apprenticeship. They're just working under that person's license per se. There are some salons where there's one licensed hairdresser and many, many people working under them.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I hear you saying from my non-experienced position on this, I join my fellow male colleagues that don't have much experience in this line, that when I walk through a street fair, we have a food fairs in Monroe and farmers markets in particular, and there oftentimes is someone sitting in a chair braiding hair for people that walk by. And I have every confidence you're correct. They probably don't have a cosmetology license, but that money they're making is important to them. Their customers are satisfied. So this bill would make their work they're doing now legal, correct?
Well, my understanding is it's already legal for someone to braid hair without a cosmetology license. So this just kind of furthers the opportunity for people to work. People are already working doing these things. They're applying makeup, they're threading, they're fixing people's hair, and they're doing those things as you described to make money. Right now, they don't have the ability to get a business license in a community because one of the requirements is have to have a cosmetology license. So they're pretty much working under the radar at this point. And there's no oversight whatsoever because we don't know who they are because it's an under-the-table operation at this point.
Well, then, follow-up question, because you're educating me. So if braiding's legal, then I'm sort of familiar with these hair extensions that basically they're just tying it into your hair, and it looks like your hair's fuller or longer or whatever. But oftentimes I see in those same places they're doing that. Now, I have not seen them applying makeup, but these are, I guess, the question is anybody giving you any evidence of any bodily injury or harm being done to members of the general public by these people practicing these economic activities across the towns of Georgia? Is any evidence of anybody being harmed?
I'm not aware of any. I have asked around. I do have a child who lives in a college town, and this is a quite prevalent business practice. There are people that exist around who are makeup artists that should probably be working in the film and television industry. They're so good. And you do not have to have a license to be a cosmetologist to work in the film and television industry. So yet another opportunity for people who have this skill set, and they are artists, to be able to work and make money.
Thank you. And I would like to also say, the services that you are limiting this to, certainly I think fall into an entirely different category than applying chemicals, hair treatments, straighteners, colorings, or using scissors to cut hair. I dare to say that these services are something that, with very few exceptions, the average American woman performs daily, nearly every day of her life on herself. Whereas I don't cut my own hair, color my own hair. I certainly do blow dry my hair and apply my own makeup.
Yes, I have 40 plus years experience blow drying my own hair. So yes, and so I think that is an important factor. Thank you for pointing that out, Madam Chairwoman, because this is something that is primarily targeting people who do something that basically people can do for themselves. A layperson has the ability to perform these, but for various reasons, typically it's going to be events, or you just didn't have time to wash your hair and you went to a dry bar and got your hair washed and blown out, so you look better that day. So it's basically services people could perform for themselves, but for whatever reason, they've hired someone to do it. It's not a specialty. It's certainly not chemicals. It's not doing anything that would potentially cause burns or harm to an individual.
Right, I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Camp. I think we do have a couple of people signed up to talk here. Thank you so much. I think Tony West, Americans for Prosperity. No, you're not speaking. Yeah, you are speaking to this bill. Okay.
I thought you were about to tell me I wasn't allowed.
No.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing. Tony West, Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. I'm here in support of the bill. Americans for Prosperity believes in advancing employment policy that empowers people to earn success, contribute to their communities, and live meaningful lives. We believe the dignity of work, ability to pursue the profession of one's choice, and voluntary association are key to a free and thriving labor market. As you all know, sometimes our occupational licensure requirements do create significant barriers to employment and to people reaching their true potential. And even at a societal level, when this occurs, we all suffer from reduced innovation and economic growth. With that said, we support this legislation because we think the law currently is a bit overbroad and unnecessary and is making it harder on people to become entrepreneurs in the area of niche beauty services. These services don't include cutting hair or using harsh chemicals, as already been mentioned, and we believe these services pose little to no safety risk to the public. If passed, aspiring beauty service entrepreneurs will be able to get to work quicker. They're going to save thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of their own time in unrelated education and work requirements and the opportunity costs that are associated with that. Consumers are also going to have more choice for their beauty needs, and business owners are going to have a larger labor pool, which is obviously an important thing right now with the labor shortages we're dealing with. So for these reasons, I encourage you all to support this bill. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Put my glasses on. Okay, Andrea Hall, Cosmetology and Barbering Licensing Board. If you'll come to the podium.
Good morning, Chairwoman and committee. Thank you for allowing us to speak on behalf, allowing me to speak on behalf of the Georgia State Board of Cosmetology and Barbers. One of the things that I would like to speak to initially is that they are correct. This is a $5 billion industry, the beauty industry is. And because of that, I believe that there's some expectation from people who receive these services that they are receiving professional services. Professional services that where the provider has been trained and they have demonstrated through some sort of licensing procedure their efficacy to provide these services. There's a reason why the licensing is so important, even though on the face of it we would say that blow drying, threading, cosmetics, even there was one other thing that was listed in the bill, braiding. On the face of it, it looks like these things are very simple and benign. However, the flip side of that is if a person is not trained properly to provide these services, there could be some serious implications associated with that, health risks that are associated with it. For example, with braiding, if a person is not trained properly to do that, there is the risk of long-term alopecia or hair loss that can happen as a result of a person not being properly skilled at that trade. Even with threading, there are some implications with that as well, dermatological implications. There could be changes in a person's pigment. There could be exacerbation of pre-existing dermatological issues, or even they could cause those things. When we speak to blow drying, there's a heat associated with that. And if a person is not properly trained in how to utilize those things, it could cause burn damage. It could cause hair breakage. And it's a difference in when you do these things at home for yourself. There's no expectation that you're going to be a professional or you're going to receive professional services. But when you go to someone and you're exchanging money for a service, there is, I think, an expectation that the person who's providing this service is going to have a certain level of professional training. One of the examples that I would like to use is most of us in this room have been brushing our teeth since we were little people, since we were children. Or we have, it's a very benign operation. If we were to, let me back up this way. Cosmetology and barbering and aesthetics, those are, I think, one of the few businesses where you still have human-to-human contact, much like when you go to the physician or you go to the dentist. There are not a lot of businesses that we enter into where you can't have an exchange that's touchless. These things require us to come into close contact with people. So I'm going to use this as an example. I've been brushing my teeth since I was 3 years old. Most of you have as well. And if we were to deregulate or de-license some of the practices that are associated with dental things, and you go to your dentist and they say, hey, we've hired a toothbrusher now. She's going to do all the toothbrushing for us and get you set up for your other services. And you go in and you sit in the chair and she's brushing your teeth. It seems fairly benign. It's something everybody can do, anybody can do. And you just happen to ask her, so where did you go to school to learn how to brush teeth? Oh, I didn't. I just have been doing it all my life, and I watched a couple YouTube videos, so I learned the process there. And I'm pretty good at it. I have some artistic abilities associated with this. I don't think any of us would feel comfortable with that. I think there, in certain professions, there's an expectation that you are getting quality professional services that are based on some initial training that you had to do, and then a demonstration of you being efficient in that training. So for that reason, we are asking that you would reconsider the amendments to Chapter 10, Title 43 as it relates to providing blow drying, braiding, threading, and the application of cosmetics without being licensed by the state of Georgia. And lastly, I would like to say this. These procedures are not simple. There needs to be a reasonable understanding of chemistry, of anatomy and physiology, of biology, and other professional techniques that are associated with these services. So I would ask that you guys not take that lightly and consider that or reconsider it as it relates to moving this bill forward. Thank you.
Would you entertain a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Representative Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many inspectors does the beauty and barber shop, Beauticians and Barbers employ for the state of Georgia?
I'm going to be honest with you, sir. I do not know, and the young woman who's coming behind me would be better able to answer that question for
Okay.
you.
But, you know, I kind of understand where you're going. You know, my mother used to have her sister-in-law come over and they gave each other perms. And that was back in the old days. I don't think they were even had any license back then. But I know that beauty shops, beauticians are inspected for cleanliness, and they have
Correct.
this blue liquid
That is correct.
that they have
For
to soak
sanitation, yes,
their
sir.
brushes and combs and everything in. And you know, during some of our mental health bills that we've heard, there's some cross-training with barbers and beauticians to recognize signs of mental illness
Correct.
and other telltale signs that they might recognize. You know, I've had a bad haircut and paid $7 for it, and I was pretty mad. You know, it's not always what they cut, it's what they leave.
Correct.
So, yeah, I can understand that. And then to Chairman Collins, he and I in the funeral business, so, you know, we have to have license as as an embalmer in order to be a funeral director. And used to, you didn't have to do that.
Correct.
But, you know, and directing a funeral, you have to have that license, and you're offering professional service,
Correct.
but you're not in danger and not even really coming in contact with other people other than shaking a hand or giving someone a hug. So I can understand just a great line there. But thank you for your testimony and your answers.
Thank you, sir. I would like to add that perhaps the effort should be more toward providing better access for these individuals who would like to practice, access to licensure or schooling or training. I think that is would be a better effort, in my opinion, because that's for people who are not necessarily in some of the metro areas. They have it's more limited access for them to even get to these services. So my thought on that. But thank you.
So you did a good job describing some of these horrible outcomes that could come about from this unlicensed people that are practicing these economic activities on an unlicensed basis. But kind of gets back to the inspector question.
Sure.
Do you have any concrete examples of citizens of the state of Georgia that have suffered any of these from such unlicensed practitioners? And if so, there's probably some documentation or
I'm certain there is, sir, and I can't stand here and tell you that I have them in this diary today, that I have any quantifiable evidence to give you right now. However, I know from personal experience, I mean, things that I have even experienced, from having, I got a threading job once, and I got a little infection here over my eye. Now, I don't know if it was because they reused the thread that they were using, or if it was just from the nick, because a lot of these services that we do, they're opening your skin. So the practitioners have to be trained in the proper way to for sanitary purposes, and just like I said, anatomy and physiology. So I personally have experienced some of those things, even with getting my hair done. I'm 49 years old, so I've had several bad hairdos or been burned by chemicals and things. And even though we're not talking about chemicals now, these things that we are talking about are foundational things for the business. These are things that usually lead to other services. So even with blow drying and things like that, and I know they say we would not be doing any additional services, but those are usually the foundational services that we get that lead to other things. And just like the representatives mentioned earlier, these things are happening anyway. they're not being legislated properly, or they're not being managed properly. But that's not an excuse, I think, for us to continue to, I'll put it like this, for us to not require a license. I just think we need to address the other side of that.
Well, and just a follow-up question, because a lot of things you were talking about, close proximity to people,
Sure.
to not physically touching the people, possible bodily injury. But in my mind, as a man, the quickest parallel I can draw is having my shoes shined. I'm in close proximity to the gentleman or lady that's shining my shoes, and I feel like it's a foot massage. That's one reason I like getting a shoe shine. But are you suggesting that people that are very much professional, that are judged on the outcome of their product, that are in close proximity with a fellow human being, are you suggesting that anyone that wants to shine shoes needs to get a license?
Well, I'm not suggesting that anyone who needs to shine shoes, but I am suggesting that if you go to a person who cuts your hair, they should be licensed.
Nobody's mentioned
Yeah,
failure to backing out of that.
I understand. I understand.
I was just trying to draw a parallel using your descriptors in your testimony to think of a profession that's a great bootstrap way to make some extra money.
Sure.
And that's all the intent of this legislation appears to me is to get kind of government out of the way and allow young people in particular to make some additional income without government stopping them. But that's just my perspective,
No.
and I respect yours, especially if you're on the board. And
Yeah, no, I understand what
trying
you're
to-
saying. That parallel, I don't know. I think the teeth and the hair is a little more parallel than the shoes and the threading. But thank you, though.
Yep, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have one more person signed up to speak. Jacqueline Jones.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I currently am the cosmetology instructor representative for the State Board of Cosmetology and Barbers. I teach at a high school in Forsyth County as well as an adjunct instructor at Lanier Technical College. I'm going to start by just answering a few things or a few comments that were made before, and then I'm going to get into the safety and sanitation of our industry. I hate to hear that someone thinks that this is a basic skill set that just anyone can do that. I do believe it takes some additional training. We have 12 inspectors for the state of Georgia in the state, for our state board office. And I want to reflect back on the shoe shine. They're touching your shoes, they're not touching your skin, they're not touching your physical body, so diseases can't be transferred from somebody shining your shoes.
Not even COVID.
Pardon?
Not even COVID.
Possibly COVID, but there are certainly diseases that can be transferred from person to person within this industry. And this is why I think this is our number one concern on state board currently, is to prevent the spread of diseases, to protect the consumers and to protect the practitioners as well. When you are threading, every hair that you pull out, so temporary hair removal, every single hair you pull out creates an open wound as soon as you pull it out. Sometimes when you pull that out, a lot of times when you do that, you'll see a little white bulb at the end of it. That's the hair bulb. When you do that, when you pull the hair bulb out, you're going to have some bodily fluid, whether it just be a clear substance or whether it be blood, come out of that open wound. And at that time, both the client and the practitioner need to be protected. So do we think anybody who's just threading understands what the basic sanitation process is? How are they going to know to ensure to protect a threading salon? How are they going to learn those basic safety and sanitation reasons or aspects of it? Even something as simple as blow drying, do we know that that person is going to clean and disinfect every comb and brush that they use on every person? How are we going to ensure that they know the proper cleaning and sanitation for the tools that they're going to be using from person to person? Okay, so you could be transmitting lice, you could be transmitting different diseases, pityriasis, different things that you could transfer from person to person. in no way are we ever trying to prohibit anyone from earning a living in this industry. I understand a lot of people are artists, they are talented, and it's unfortunate that they see cosmetology, barber school, aesthetic school as something that's prohibiting them from earning a living. We have opportunities for people to become apprentices so that they could work under someone who's already licensed, so that would not cost them money. They would be working in the salon. They could be earning a living while they are learning this profession. So that's one way. Being an instructor at a technical college, I'm very well aware that we have the HOPE grant in the state of Georgia, and most people qualify for that. Most people can go to technical college for free to earn this diploma and then go take their state board test to become licensed. It's really, I don't think anyone can claim that they're economically disadvantaged from becoming a licensed master cosmetologist, a licensed barber, and a licensed esthetician, or a licensed hair designer. I will argue that there really is nothing prohibiting you from doing it other than you just don't want to put the time into it. And if you don't want to put the time into becoming educated, what makes us think they're going to put the time into learning the safety and sanitation to prevent the spread of diseases for the good people of Georgia? What makes us think that they will take that seriously and learn it for themselves if they're not willing to become professionally educated?
So I hear your passion, and have you made a concerted effort? I've learned through testimony today that the cosmetology people that are hired by our film industry here in Georgia, we're the number one, or close to the number one state in which to make films now. If these professionals that are applying makeup to actors don't have to be licensed by y'all, are you coming after them? Are you testifying? Have you made any effort to include them in this legislation? Because on the flip side of that, I'm sure that every one of them are safe and know what they're doing. But on the flip side, you're talking about people that are just trying to make a little money. So, not disagreeing with the public health concerns you just articulated, but it appears to me that we're picking on the least of these and not applying the same degree of pressure or passion to those that might be outside of the scope of Georgia regulation right now and doing the exact same or even more regulated activities that might properly require a cosmetology license. That's my only question. You bring a lot of passion and concern right now, but are you going after the people, the young ladies that are applying cosmetics and perfumes and at the cosmetology counters and the department stores in Georgia as well? I'm just curious.
The department stores technically are doing it illegally. They're supposed to be telling you how to do it. They're supposed to be showing you how to apply it on yourself. So that's really what they're supposed to do. And with the department stores not being registered as a beauty salon or a aesthetic salon or something like that, they're not going to be they're not going to have an inspection done by one of the state board inspectors. The movie industry is something, I'm going to be honest and say I will begin to research this, because I've tried to get my foot in the door within the state. With the technical colleges of Georgia now have a film academy, and the hair and makeup have been left out for the last few years. I've been trying to reach out and find out and see if I could be a part of that to help our state, because to the best of my knowledge, they have been flying people in from California to do hair and makeup. They have not been employing Georgians, and I think that there's a big gap there that needs to be filled in our state. So that's something that I will do research on, and I will continue to fight for, because I feel like if we're bringing people in from out of the state, you're missing a whole market here with people who are licensed and qualified to do that.
Yeah. Representative Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Will you tell me what threading is?
Threading is a technique for temporary hair removal, and the times I've seen people do it in salons, they'll have it in their mouth. They take a piece of thread and they sort of make a triangle, and it goes in and it will individually pull one hair out at a time. And it's a technique. I'm not very good at it, I'll be honest with it. It's a newer thing that's even been added to our rules and regulations, but it's where you're just taking a piece of thread and you're manipulating in a way that it's wrapping around each individual hair and it's pulling the hair out one at a time with the thread.
Wow. If someone's not licensed, what jurisdiction do you have over them?
We can give them a cease and desist order, and then if they were to attempt to become licensed, then we could prevent them from becoming licensed.
But if they never attempt to become licensed, you have no jurisdiction.
To the best of my knowledge, we don't, and I do think that that needs to be changed. I think we need to be given some formal authority, outside of just fined for working. That's something that I think needs to change. That's not currently. We don't have legal, as far as police jurisdiction over a person.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And before I entertain a motion here, I would like to just address one thing you mentioned earlier, and perhaps it speaks to the motivation behind those individuals in the state of Georgia that are engaging in these activities outside of licensure. And I think you said something about it. Could it just be that they don't want to go back to school or don't want to take the time to go back to school? And I would just like to make the point there. I know that there are young women, young mothers across my district that engage in these activities, and it may very well be that they just don't have the funding at this time, or it's not possible or feasible time-wise or financially for them to go back to school. So I don't think it's that they are intentionally trying to skirt the system, but more that they're just trying to find a need and meet a need in their community that works with their schedules and their young families. I'd just like to point that out.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm very compassionate about that. But again, they could become an apprentice where they would still be able to physically work and earn money while they're learning that, as well as the HOPE grant would provide their tuition costs. And if they are financially in a position financially where they feel like they can't afford it, they likely would qualify for the Pell Grant, which would give them money while they're in school to help counteract any income that they're not able to earn at that time. So I think the Pell Grant is around $7,000 a school year that they could get, so that would help supplement their income while they're in school.
Thank you. If there are no further questions this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to pass.
Do I hear a second?
Yes, you can. Cynthia Williamson on the subcommittee.
Okay, so second. Okay, all those in favor of passage of HB 1231, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign? No. Okay.
So it's 2-1.
Motion to
in favor.
pass. Okay, motion does pass. Thank you.
Virgin Williamson on the subcommittee.
Okay.
So you were-
Oh.
on the subcommittee last year. So it's 2-1 to pass. Oh, I'm not on the subcommittee? That's right.
Oh,